My name is Elizabeth Musa, and today we're focusing on politics and we're exploring the ongoing political crisis in Rivers State, which led to the declaration of a state of emergency in the state. We'll take a look at the implications, the effect on Rivers State economy, and what it means for democracy in Nigeria. The political turmoil in Rivers State has been festering for months, culminating in violent confrontations and the reported destruction of critical infrastructure, including pipeline bombings. This led to the declaration of a state of emergency in the state by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. While President Bola Tinubu justified the emergency rule as a necessary intervention to restore governance and order, his critics have accused him of political overreach and unconstitutional action. The conflict escalated in December 2024 when the Rivers State House of Assembly attempted to impeach Fubara, a move widely seen as influenced by former Governor Nyesom Wike following a power tussle to run the state affairs. The fallout led to a breakdown in governance, violent protests, and attacks on government institutions. The declaration has led to the suspension of Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Odu, and all 27 elected members of the State House of Assembly for 6 months, with the president appointing Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, a sole administrator, to run the affairs of the state. Now, to help us understand this better, we're being joined by Ebenezer Wikina. He is the founder of Policy Shapers, and he's joining us from Rivers State, and he is the best person for this conversation. You're welcome to the show, Ebenezer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
Right. So let's go straight to the conversation today. Given the political crisis that has rocked the state with Governor Siminalayi, I beg your pardon, Fubara on one hand, and the 27 lawmakers, Nyesom Wike on the other hand, did this emergency declaration and suspension of democracy in Rivers State come as a surprise to you?
It did. To be honest, I personally thought it was a step too far. I thought that there were quite a number of other ways that the president could have been able to resolve this. Given that the former governor of Rivers State is on his cabinet, and the Rivers State governor himself could have easily just been called to Abuja. I know that in the past there had been a couple of meetings that the president had convened, but I think he could have been able to insist on peace, ensuring that both parties sort of like discuss and negotiate much more than going this far. Especially because if you consider that there are many other states in Rivers State there are many other states in Nigeria at the moment who are going through quite a number of violent times. Just 10 hours from Abuja, Yobe State, you have basically militants and terrorists basically telling people to vacate their homes in 6 days or be killed. But we haven't seen the president declare state of emergency or even give a national broadcast and stuff like that, because I mean, that for me, that seems a lot more life-threatening than a godfather and in quote, a godson basically fighting over political control. So I thought it was a step too far. I thought there were many other ways that this could have been resolved, especially following the Supreme Court ruling. The governor had tried to go present the budget to the House of Assembly. House of Assembly had said that they are going on recess. So there are many of those kind of political undertones to things that I thought could have been politically resolved much more than state of emergency. It was just a step too far.
All right. Can you give me a sense of what the people in Rivers State right now are saying, what they feel? Just you are based there, so you probably have the better, you'll be able to see in a different perspective. What are the people saying right now?
Yeah, no. So on the day when the state of emergency was on that evening, it had just finished raining. So I'd gone into the old GRA, which is like where the government house is, and all across the streets of Port Harcourt, I think there was like palpable tension. So the streets were cleared. There's hardly anybody on the road. Even yesterday, as of yesterday morning, most parents didn't send their kids to school because like there's just this tension, and this comes from like a history of violent clashes in River State and how things can easily get out of hand. But I get a sense that people want these things to be more behind us than as our present reality, and so there's really no threat of violence. I think it's more like PTSD from everything that's happened before in the past, and the fear that something could happen and things could go out of hand. So I get the sense that people want things to be more to move faster. And so even though the president has said that the sole administrator will be there for 6 months, I think it's the wish, and it's my personal wish as well, that this resolves much more faster than 6 months. Because I think if it's left to go long and fester for a very long time, it gets harder to resolve things. It's almost like when, like, in the family, if mother and the father are fighting, like if they don't resolve things faster, it's almost like the things become harder the longer things go. So I expect the president to be able to find ways to resolve this much more faster than keeping this on for like six months. Because this is not a military regime. A sole administrator is only exists in the military time, and I hope that we can go back to normalcy and go back to democratic rule as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, as soon as 6 months. What's that? Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution empowers the president to declare a state of emergency. But are there limitations to the exercise of this power by the president?
Yeah, I mean, the NBA had come out to speak. There are many thoughts and legal interpretations everywhere about how far he can go and how far he can't go. The general consensus is that he really shouldn't have the power to take out an elected governor and elected House of Assembly members. Some people say that the only way a governor can be taken out of office is in Section 188, which speaks about either the governor dying, that's natural cause, or the governor being impeached. So so I mean, there's a lot of conversation. I think there's so much noise out there. I personally think that I mean, I feel like when there are so many peaceful ways to resolve issues, I would rather choose that, much more than going to the extreme of now having so much ruckus and all the infighting that we're seeing currently. So I mean, maybe he had the power to, maybe he didn't, but I feel like this is the power that he should have left as a final last resort, especially because we really haven't. I mean, they're talking about the pipeline explosion. So the federal government pays billions of naira for pipeline security, and this is a federal contract. So I personally don't understand why the federal government is not holding the contractor who's supposed to protect the pipelines accountable, but instead holding the governor accountable. So there are many other ways this could have been resolved. I think it has just been taken way too far, and I think the president needs to really get a hold of this and resolve it so it doesn't escalate into a political crisis as we're seeing in the House of National Assembly current.
And speaking on the National Assembly itself, let's talk about the nature of the swearing in. Now, the sole administrator, Ibok Eteibas, a retired Navy general, was sworn in already before the National Assembly even began deliberations on this matter. Does this in any way mean that the president has some sort of disdain for the National Assembly?
For me, I think he feels like he's so confident that he's going to get. It feels like he's super confident he'll get the 2/3 majority. It's almost like he feels like he had called everybody and just gotten their confirmation, and that when they meet today, it's all just going to be sealed. So I don't think it's more disdain. I think it's more confidence and just knowing that this is just covered already. Because I was also surprised to see that the sole administrator was already sworn in without the 2/3 majority formally given. So perhaps he's super confident. Let's see how it unfolds in the National Assembly.
Right, let's see how it unfolds. And one of the reasons that cited by the president, Bola Tinubu, to declare the state of emergency is him saying that there's a threat to pipeline facilities in Rivers State. Do you think that the president is right on this one?
Yeah, I mean, oil is Nigeria's mainstay, whether we like it or not. That's, if anything affects the oil market, it's going to definitely affect our foreign currency exchange. It's going to affect the way our currency strength. It would affect the whole market, right? Our entire economy basically will be affected by that. So in many ways, I understand when you're trying to be proactive in these cases, but I would say, as opposed to, again, mixing the political issues with the security issues, I would say, for example, maybe beef up security when it comes to pipeline vandalization at this point. DSS gets a lot of early warning messages about things that want to happen before they happen. So maybe ensuring that there's more partnership, maybe forming a JTF where the DSS and the military and the Navy and all those guys are basically get in collaboration with the security consultants, are working to ensure there's more increased coverage and security on the pipeline while the political issue gets solved. Because now you're taking everybody out, and I feel like you're packing everything out and you have to pack them in again, and it feels like quite a clumsy process that could have been handled quite easily. So so I understand. I personally understand, because this affects our economy. But there are many other ways that this could have been resolved.
Any other ways that this could have been resolved? So what then are the options left for Siminalayi, Fubara, and the 27 lawmakers? Are there any options left?
Yeah, I mean, the option has been the option that I mean, I and many others have been advocating for so many months, which is negotiation. Going to, I mean, whenever there's, I think conflict is natural, right? So it's how you resolve conflict that really matters. So I think going back to the negotiation table, having the conversation about all of the issues that have happened and finding ways to come up with a mutual agreement. Sometimes both sides might have to make compromises, but I think that is actually what matters the most because like because of how the governor has been so distracted by this issue since 2023, there really hasn't been as much. You can't really say like this is what has happened in this administration. Like there's some strides in healthcare, there's strides in infrastructure here and there, but like there's no consolidated thing that you can say this really is how much he had achieved over the past 2 years. So, and I think that is a problem, and it's a shame for the Rivers people because much more than anything, the biggest losers in all of this is the Rivers people. It's not the governor, it's not the ex-governor, it's the Rivers people because these resources are for the Rivers people and not for any individual alone. So, negotiate, resolve. Come back to negotiating table, find ways to solve this, and put the interest of the people forward and put these people at the center of these conversations. Yeah.
Right, and let's talk about democracy very quickly. Any threats to democracy in Nigeria, like in your own view, in view of what has happened, do you see any threat to what democracy is?
I do. I see. I sort of feel like this could be a dangerous precedent. And I know that the Attorney General tried to like defend this yesterday in his press conference, even though he didn't really like quote any sections of the Constitution, because I was expecting him as a lawyer to be able to quote sections of the Constitution or quote like precedents in the past to be able to defend this. But I feel like this sets a precedent where it feels like any president in the future who comes into office and doesn't like a governor can declare state of emergency on that state with the slightest issue and just say like I have a solo and that I'll be there for 6 months. So that sort of makes our democratic process and election sort of like starts to feel like it's basically what's happening at the local government level where state governors are now deciding to set up elections for local government whenever they like. And if they don't like a local government chairperson, they can now have CTC chairman that they appoint. So it's basically the same thing happening at the federal level, right? Where you can now say, okay, I remove this governor and put who I like and have the person lead that place for as long as I want. So I feel it's a challenge on democracy. And it's something that we should be frowned against because it then sets a dangerous precedent for the future. It could be 2 years, 5 years, 6 years from now. Someone could come in and say they're taking away governor from Lagos State or Kaduna State because they don't like that person and putting a sole administrator. And I think it's a dangerous precedent to set.
Right, and before I let you go, Ebenezer, I mean, I know I've already asked you this earlier. I'd ask you what it feels like right now in Rivers State, but for you, what's the way forward for Rivers State, the people of Rivers State right now?
Yeah, no, I think the way forward is clear. It's negotiation, it's a peaceful resolution of this issue so that normalcy can return. And that's one of the things that my organization, Policy Shaper, has been trying to do over the past year. So we've been able to convene up to 100 young people in Rivers State, and we're bringing them together to see how we can discuss the future of the state. And this actually was even before all of the political crisis began. We had been thinking about the Rivers 2050 vision projects for quite a while. Because unlike Lagos State that has a long-term plan from 2022 to 2052, Rivers State hasn't had a long-term plan since the 1980s. And I think for a state that has a lot of natural resource that has been blessed with years, up to 50 years of like natural resource and abundance, I think is rascal to just be able to have that state without a plan for such a long time. So we bring young people together and we said, okay, for the next 25 years, we're going to convene experts in focus group discussions where we're going to have a statewide survey, hoping to reach close to 100,000 people. We're going to have town hall conversations. We're hoping that we can have a space where everyone can envision the future and not just be too sucked into the present, but for the next 25 years, how do we want the state to be in education? The kids that will be born, who will teach them? Where will be the hospitals that will treat people who will be sick? Which new roads need to be made? What local government areas need to be connected to the city? All those kind of questions are things that I think we need to be asking ourselves now. And I think putting development in front of this conversation helps us to put things in perspective. Because like the perspective currently is just like the whole Godfather versus Godson thing. But I think putting things in perspective, like people need development, and that's what government exists for. if people don't get public goods, then why is public service and public leadership there? So I think just having that in front is what we really want to do at this moment, and we hope that we can make progress with that. We hope for the vision book to be launched in October, and we've started work already on this, putting the various committees together to work on it. Yeah.
We can add, this question is from one of our viewers who just sent this in right now. It's quite lengthy, so I'll ask you to be patient with me. The Supreme Court has decided that the statutory allocations due to Rivers State should be withheld because the governor did not recognize the House of Assembly and did not present the budget before the said House for passage. Mind you, this question is from a lawyer. And President Tinubu claims that Governor Fubara, who had written to the same House to enable him present the budget, has failed to obey the Supreme Court. The same President Tinubu also went ahead to appoint a sole administrator after suspending the governor, the deputy governor, and the members of the House of Assembly. Now we're reading that the withheld allocations will be released to the sole administrator, who is nothing but an impostor concocted by the president. Those are the words this person used. So the allocations will be withheld because there was no House of Assembly, or the governor did not recognize the House and did not present the budget. But now they've suspended both the governor and the House and proceeded to appoint a sole administrator and handed over allocations to the sole administrator. Now this person is asking that, how do you reconcile this?
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's very tough to reconcile. The same question that I also personally had. I'm like, if this was the issue, and the governor went to present the budget, I mean, why shouldn't we make sure that this actually happens? Why shouldn't the president say, House of Assembly, what's happening, speaking to the speaker and stuff like that, back channeling all of this and making sure that the governor actually does present the budget, and the House actually has the right to say no to the budget and tell him go work more on this and go work more on that. So so it doesn't make any sense that the Supreme Court had a ruling, and the ruling was supposed to be implemented, and then we just move forward and say, oh, it's not been implemented, and just had a state of emergency. It felt like it jumped, when you should have walked. It felt like we just jumped from step 1 to step 100 when we could have just walked through the entire process. So yeah, so I actually do agree with him. It's also important to know that I think the allocation also just got withheld now, not previously, because the governor had been receiving allocation before now. The allocation was going to be withheld following the Supreme Court ruling. So this would have been the months where he wouldn't have gotten allocation. And for me, I care more about the civil servants. I think I'm thinking more about civil servants from the perspective of the fact that people are working in the various ministries now, and would they be paid their salaries at the end of the month? There are many questions around that. And there are questions around initiatives like the free bus service that the governor has had within the states and some other palliative measures, right? Would those things end, or will they continue? And what will be the funding to sort of like continue that? So I think the sole administrator should see himself as a stopgap measure, to be able to stay in there while this issue gets resolved, and hopefully fast enough. But he should also make sure that these good initiatives that are happening within the state should not end, because the money is not his money, it's Rivers State money. His allocation is for Rivers people, it's not for any particular individual, not even the ex-governor or the current governor. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on that.
And then speaking on allocation, now state funds and allocations cannot be appropriated without being enabled by the appropriation law. Now section 120 and 121 of the Constitution are very explicit on this. So what budget will the sole administrator now be using to appropriate allocations at Rivers State?
Well, perhaps they call this an emergency fund, right? Because it's a state of emergency, and so maybe because we're in emergency rule, this becomes like an emergency fund, which should not run for too long, which is why I think 6 months is such a long time, because like 6 months is half a year, and in half a year, so much can be done, right? And so why delay development for such a long time because of political crisis? So I would say that, maybe this is an emergency fund that should be spent for maybe a month plus, but I think in a month, this should definitely have been resolved. The governor, the president, the president especially, because he's the leader of the country, should be able to rally these forces together and the various parties and find a way to resolve this as fast as possible. Because I think keeping it on for a very long time makes it harder to get resolved. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ebenezer Wikina, founder, policy shaper. Truly insightful speaking to you this morning. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much.
This has been the big story here on the BDTV Breakfast Show. My name is Elizabeth Musa. Stay tuned for more.